Okay, let's unpack this. What if the very words you use, even silently to yourself, are actually like programming your future? We're talking about the incredible, often underestimated power of your inner monologue. We all have it, right? That constant stream of thought, that internal narrator. But what if that narrator, maybe operating on autopilot, is actually holding you back? What if the words you choose say addict versus person in recovery or failure versus learning experience aren't just labels? What if they're actually like architects of your reality? And this isn't just some self-help platitude. It seems to be deeply rooted in how our minds are actually wired.
Indeed. Yeah, today we're really taking a deep dive into how that innate capacity for language extends to our internal narrative, and how consciously choosing our words can literally rewrite our personal reality. It can shape a path toward, well, hope, resilience, and growth. Steven Pinker, in his work on the language instinct, really shone a light on how deeply embedded language is within our cognitive framework. It's not just a tool we pick up, it's more fundamental, part of our mental architecture, functioning almost like a cognitive program. And if external language works that way, then it stands to reason our internal language, our self-talk, does too.
So the mission today is?
Our mission today is really to explore how to become a more conscious author of your own story. To understand that these words aren't merely reflections of how you feel, but they're active constructors of it. We've pulled together a pretty rich stack of sources for this neurological insights from Oliver Sacks, behavioral science from James Clear, psychological theories from Festinger and Jung, and of course, the linguistic foundations from Pinker himself. We're going to explore how you can leverage this instinct to build a reality of, well, hope, resilience, and growth. Think of it as a workshop for your mind, using language.
A workshop for the mind. I like that. Okay, so this idea of language as a cognitive program, software for our minds. What's truly fascinating, maybe a bit unsettling too, is how deep it goes. Pinker suggests it's practically coded into us, right?
Yeah.
He posits that language isn't just learned, it's an instinct, like a common body architecture of rules, syntactic, morphological, phonological, that our minds use to create meaning.
Exactly. He uses this fantastic analogy, comparing it to the body plans of animals in a phylum. Think amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals. They all share a basic architecture. Backbone, forelimbs, tail, skull. Even if those parts look wildly different, like a bat's wing versus a whale's flipper, the underlying plan, the connections, are still there.
The shin bone connected to the thigh bone, that kind of thing.
Right. Pinker argues language works similarly. Different languages might seem vastly different, but there's a shared underlying plan rules for grammar or word formation, sound systems. There's just a small set of varying parameters that account for the differences we see.
Okay, so the mind isn't just having thoughts, it's actively building them using this deep instinctual toolkit, which means your internal narrative, that inner voice, isn't just random chatter. It's like a foundational program running your sense of self.
Wow. And if you can understand that code, maybe even change it, you could genuinely rewrite your own operating system. That's it, exactly. So if our external language operates on this deep blueprint, using grammar and sounds instinctively, think about the implications for our internal language, the silent stories we tell ourselves. Is our internal dialogue also following these rules, creating a sort of body architecture for our self-perception?
It suggests the words we string together internally are more than just thoughts. They're fundamental building blocks.
Absolutely. Operating on a really foundational, instinctual level. It's the operating system for our identity, constantly running, constantly shaping our experience. And this leads perfectly into the idea of the self not being fixed, but being, well, constructed.
Yeah.
A narrative. William James, the father of American psychology, he pointed this out. He said the self or ego isn't some pre-existing source, but rather the last and most complicated fruit of our ideas, meaning our identity is built over time.
Built from our ideas, experiences, and the stories we tell ourselves about them.
Critically, yes, the stories. It's dynamic, always evolving, always being updated by that internal narrative.
So our self isn't a statue. It's more like a constantly unfolding story we're telling ourselves. That's a big shift for how many of us think about identity.
It really is. And Oliver Sacks gives us this incredibly profound and honestly quite heartbreaking example with his patient, Mr. Thompson. Sacks wrote, "Each of us constructs and lives a narrative, and that this narrative is us, our identities." But Mr. Thompson, due to severe amnesia, his continuous narrative was, well, it was shattered. He was deprived of continuity.
So what happened to you?
The consequence was what Sacks called a narrational frenzy. Imagine every few minutes forgetting everything, who you just met, who you were moments before. So desperately trying to create meaning, a sense of self, he was constantly creating a world in self to replace what was continually being forgotten. Sachs describes these endless confabulations, this mythomania, as his way of compensating, inventing reality moment by moment because his internal story, his cognitive program, had crashed.
Wow, that's incredibly vivid. It really paints a picture of how vital that internal narrative is. If it breaks down, the whole system just collapses. It's not just about remembering facts, it's about the very fabric of who you are.
Precisely. It highlights the absolute, almost existential need for a consistent inner story. It's not a luxury. It's fundamental to our sense of self, our sanity. It's the thread weaving our experiences together into something coherent. Without it, we completely unravel.
Okay, so connecting this back to our listeners.
Right, so think about it. The story you tell yourself about who you are, what you've done, what you're capable of, that's your operating system. It's your internal GPS, your personal constitution, maybe even your ongoing memoir. And like any program or any story, it can be updated, it can be revised, you can consciously edit it. The words you use internally are literally coding your reality moment by moment.
Okay, so we've got this powerful idea of language as our inner architect, the foundation of our narrative self. But here's the tricky part, right? If our words are so powerful, why do we get stuck? Why is it so hard to shift from, say, addict to person in recovery? Or from seeing ourselves as a failure to seeing something as a learning experience?
Yeah.
It's not always easy. Our minds seem to resist change, even positive change.
That's a key point. This resistance isn't just stubbornness, it's a deep psychological mechanism.
Designed to maintain stability, maybe,
Yeah.
even if that stability is uncomfortable.
Exactly. We cling to old, unhelpful self-labels because they're familiar. They're anchors in our cognitive world. And a lot of this resistance comes down to what Leon Festinger called cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance. Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. It's that uncomfortable mental feeling, that tug of war, when our actions don't line up with our beliefs about ourselves, or when we hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time. It's internal friction, psychological discomfort that comes from inconsistency.
Okay, so our minds hate inconsistency.
Basically, yes. We strive for internal consistency. So when there's a clash, like believing you're a failure, but you're actively trying to succeed in recovery, that creates dissonance, discomfort. And your mind automatically tries to reduce that discomfort, to resolve the inconsistency.
So our brains are trying to win an internal argument with themselves.
You could put it that way, yeah. And one common way we reduce dissonance is by selectively seeking information that supports our existing beliefs, and also by avoiding situations where their beliefs might be challenged.
Ah, confirmation bias.
Exactly. So if you've always labeled yourself an addict and then you try to embrace being a person in recovery, your mind might actually filter out evidence of your progress. It might latch onto any small setback as proof of the old label. It makes breaking free from negative self-talk incredibly difficult because you're unconsciously looking for reasons to prove the old story right.
Even when it's hurting you.
Even when it's hurting you. And the magnitude of dissonance matters too. It's influenced by how important the decision or belief is. For something huge like personal identity and recovery, the clash between an old harmful label and a new hopeful one creates intense dissonance, which leads to really strong resistance to change. The more important the shift, the harder your mind might fight to rationalize the old narrative just to avoid that discomfort.
That makes so much sense. It's like our brain prefers being comfortably wrong over being uncomfortably right sometimes. We've all been there, clinging to an old story. It really is a mental tug of war. And it reminds me of anchoring bias. Dan Riley talks about this, right?
Yeah.
How that first piece of information can stick.
Absolutely. Airley's work shows how that first price you see for a TV, say $3,000, becomes an anchor. It affects how you judge all other TV prices. Well, the same thing happens with self-labels. If you first define yourself as a failure, maybe early on or maybe just persistently, that label becomes a cognitive anchor. It sets a default for how you see yourself, how you interpret things.
So if your internal anchor is, I'm not good enough, you might just unconsciously look for proof of that and miss your actual successes.
Precisely. That anchor, as described in 5 Psychological Truths, it skews perception and decision-making. It creates this filter, and tragically, it can lead to repeated mistakes because you stop looking for disconfirming evidence. You don't challenge the anchor. If you're anchored to, I'm not creative, you might dismiss your own creative ideas, avoid trying new things, maybe even subconsciously sabotage efforts that could prove the anchor wrong.
Just to maintain that internal consistency. Wow.
It's an incredibly powerful force keeping us stuck sometimes.
And this isn't just internal, is it? Zimbardo's Stanford prison experiment showed how social roles and narratives can take hold. That example of the guard justifying his actions by saying, they haven't got control of my mind, that's chilling. It shows how we can maintain a false internal narrative even when our actions, or maybe our deeper desires, totally contradict it.
Yeah.
We get trapped in these self-made prisons of language.
Yeah, Zimbardo's work really highlights how deeply we can get tangled in the stories we tell ourselves, or the rules we adopt. That guard constructed an internal narrative that let him believe he was separate from or in control of his own cruel actions. It's a stark reminder that our inner dialogue isn't just passive commentary. It can be an active co-conspirator in maintaining a reality, even a damaging one. It's sense-making, however distorted.
So for anyone listening, have you ever caught yourself saying, oh, that's just the way I am, even when you wished it wasn't? Maybe you're convinced you're bad with money, you're always late, or just not a leader. That's likely your old narrative anchor, held fast by cognitive dissonance. Makes it incredibly tough to break free. But understanding why they stick, that's the first step, right?
Absolutely. Understanding the mechanism is key to loosening its grip.
Okay, so we know why it's hard. Let's talk solutions. How do we actually become that more conscious author? How do we make the shift from addict to person in recovery, or failure to learning experience? It has to start with being intentional, making that inner dialogue work for us, not against us.
Exactly. And James Clear, in Atomic Habits, gives us a brilliant way to think about this. He says, building better habits isn't about littering your day with life hacks. They're about becoming someone. This applies directly. It's not just about saying new words. It's about fundamentally being a new person, embodying an updated identity that those words reinforce.
Becoming someone new. So your inner monologue is how you describe yourself to yourself, and that description becomes your identity script.
Right. And the 5 Psychological Truths source gives explicit advice here. Return to your identity script and update it weekly. Treat your self-narrative like a living document, something you actively revise and refine, not set in stone.
Okay, update it weekly. What does that actually look like? How do we make that practical?
Well, it could be pretty simple. Maybe take 10 minutes each Sunday. Write down the positive self-descriptions you want to embody. Choose, say, 3 core identity statements. I am resilient. I am compassionate. I am capable of progress. Then, during the week, you don't just passively repeat them. You actively look for evidence. When you face a challenge, you internally narrate, okay, my resilient self can handle this. You're looking for the data points.
Actively seeking confirmation for the new narrative.
Exactly. And this also involves what Festner called changing cognition about alternatives, reframing the past. Instead of dwelling on failures, you consciously look for the positives of chosen and minimizing negatives of rejected. So, a relapse isn't proof you're an addict doomed to fail. It's reframed as a learning experience, a data point on your journey as a person in recovery. It's an opportunity to adjust strategy, not proof of flawed character. You choose to see the lesson.
That's a huge shift, from internal judge to internal coach. Does this apply to how we talk to others too? Or just ourselves?
Oh, absolutely. Susan Cain gives a great example of reframing in communication that works perfectly for self-talk too. Instead of accusing someone, you're so antisocial, you reframe it. Can we figure out a way to organize our weekends that works for us both? Apply that internally. Instead of, I failed again, ask, what can I learn from this to do differently? Instead of, I'm so lazy, ask, what small step can I take now?
Moving from judgment to inquiry. Powerful. Okay, but how do we make these new words, these new stories actually stick? It's one thing to say them, another to embed them so they become the default.
There's a science to this, right? Building new mental habits.
There is, and this is where conditioning comes in. Pavlov's work on conditioned reflexes is relevant here. He showed a neutral stimulus, paired repeatedly with something else, can elicit a new reaction. So if you consistently pair new, positive language, I am resilient, with feelings of progress or effort or even just intention, you start to condition your mind to associate those words with those positive states.
Like creating tiny new neural connections. Exactly. Each time you consciously choose the new description, maybe feel a small win, or even just acknowledge the effort, you strengthen that connection. Over time, it becomes more automatic. A challenge rises, and instead of the old I'm a failure reflex, the new I am resilient thought pops up.
Repetition is key then.
Absolutely. Ebbinghouse's memory work showed that consistent repetition leads to firmer establishment of learned material, even long series of thoughts or words. It's not just rote memorization, it's consistent, mindful engagement with your new identity script.
So practice until it becomes second nature, like building a muscle.
Precisely. And Skinner's work on operant conditioning adds another layer: positive reinforcement. He found non-aversive measures are more effective long-term than punishment. Applied internally, this means using language that rewards progress and effort, not punishing setbacks. Instead of, "You idiot, you failed," try acknowledging the effort or the lesson. "Okay, that didn't go as planned, but I learned X and I showed up. That counts."
Yeah.
That positive internal reinforcement strengthens the new pathways. We repeat what gets rewarded, even thoughts.
And Bandura talked about self-reinforcement too, didn't he?
He did. We can regulate our own behavior by arranging incentives for ourselves. This includes setting new standards against which accomplishments are judged.
So you set a standard maybe. My standard is to try, even if imperfect, and then you self-reward when you meet it. Even just positive self-talk. I met my standard today. Good job. It creates this powerful internal feedback loop.
So, okay, every time you consciously choose person in recovery over addict or learning experience over failure, you're doing a rep, strengthening that new neural pathway, training your internal voice.
Exactly. You're building its capacity to support the you want to be, making those positive narratives the default.
And the impact of this isn't just internal, right? It radiates outwards. It affects our emotional resilience, our relationships, everything. Oh, definitely. The language we use internally connects directly to our emotional regulation. Daniel Goleman talks about the amygdala, our brain's specialist for emotional matters. Our alarm bell, negative self-talk, "I'm going to mess this up, I can't cope," can trigger what he calls flooding.
Emotional flooding. Can you give us a quick picture of what that feels like?
Sure. Imagine a dam bursting inside your head. A sudden, overwhelming surge of intense emotion, panic, anxiety, rage that just washes over clear thought. You're swamped by dreadful, out-of-control feelings.
Yeah.
Your internal alarm is just blaring constantly.
No, sounds familiar.
Right. But choosing hopeful, optimistic language can counteract this. It gives you a sense of perspective, more control over impulses. Goleman notes SSRIs can do something similar chemically, but you can achieve a similar effect through intentional language. Soothing language calms that alarm bell, lets the rational mind re-engage. Your inner monologue becomes an emotional thermostat.
Regulating the internal climate. I like that.
And Bessel van der Kolk's work on trauma really underscores this. People stuck in hyperarousal or shut down cannot learn from experience. Their brains are in survival mode. Their narratives are often fragmented, stuck in the past threat. A new, consciously crafted narrative helps integrate those traumatic memories, placing them in the past, restoring executive functioning, and with that, self-confidence, creativity, playfulness.
So telling yourself a story of survival and growth, instead of perpetual victimhood, actually rewires the brain, moves it from alarm to learning.
That seems to be the case. It opens the door to a fuller, more engaged life by changing the fundamental story.
That is incredibly powerful. So think about a tough situation. Does your inner voice fan the flames of panic, or does it guide you to calm problem solving? The words make the difference. And this isn't just about managing our own emotions, is it? It changes how we relate to others, too.
Hugely. Attachment theory, as Levine and Heller describe it, shows this beautifully. Partners with different attachment styles can feel like they're speaking two different languages. An anxious person might see their partner needing space as rejection. Their internal narrative might scream, "They don't love me," or abandonment.
Leading to maybe clinginess or arguments?
Exactly. But by reshaping your attachment working models, those underlying beliefs about relationships, you can change that internal story. Instead of "my partner is pushing me away," you consciously reframe. "My partner needs space, values independence, and that doesn't mean they don't love me." This internal shift lets you communicate needs clearly without resorting to attacks or defensiveness. You move from fear to understanding.
There was that example in the sources, Janet and Brian.
Right. Janet thought giving Brian space would make him appreciate her, but he just disappeared. Her internal narrative of passive waiting stopped her from communicating effectively. If she'd used clear language, expressing her feelings and needs not as demands, but authentically, the outcome might have been different, or at least clearer, sooner.
So changing that internal interpretation, "my partner needs space," not "my partner rejects me," changes your emotional response, and then the whole relationship dynamic can shift. Building bridges with language.
Exactly, internally and externally. And it goes beyond couples. Think about group dynamics. The we versus they thing Cialdini and Zimbardo observed. Fans say, "We won, but they lost." We connect or distance ourselves with language. So actively using inclusive, positive language about your support network, your community, your team, it reinforces a shared, healthy identity. You build connection, not separation.
Your words literally construct the boundaries of your social world.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so this whole practice, rewriting the inner monologue, it's not just about coping, is it? It's a bigger. It's about flourishing, growth, reaching our potential, becoming the conscious author of our life story.
Absolutely. It links right into Maslow's hierarchy, especially those highest aspirations. Growth, self-actualization, the striving toward health, the quest for identity and autonomy, the yearning for excellence. Rewriting your inner monologue is a direct path towards these. Your internal GPS needs to be pointing towards growth if you want to get there. If it's stuck saying you can't, you won't even start the climb.
And Maslow also said something about how experiences change the whole personality.
Yes, a profound point. He said, when a significant stimulus, like trauma, or perhaps like a consistently chosen new narrative, hits the personality, it changes that whole personality. The personality swallows the cause, digests it, and emits the effect. Meaning your chosen language, when deeply ingrained, isn't superficial. It can fundamentally alter your core being.
That's real transformation. Changing the core you. Sounds like the growth mindset.
Exactly like Carol Dweck's growth mindset, where challenges become learning experiences, not dead ends called failure. Conscious language is the tool that facilitates this mindset. It promotes perseverance. Instead of, I failed, the growth voice says, I learned. What's next? And that mindset, fueled by language, is what Angela Duckworth found in people with grit. It's the sweat, the hard work, the persistence, the determination. It is the getting up and dusting yourself off. Your inner monologue, cultivated purposefully, becomes the engine for that. Does it say quit, or does it say keep going, you've got this?
So it's not just surface thoughts. True self-authorship connects our conscious intentions with deeper, unconscious stuff, aligning the whole self.
Precisely. Carl Jung's concept of individuation speaks directly to this. He said viable progress only comes from the cooperation of both conscious and unconscious elements. Our conscious effort to rewrite our monologue can be a bridge, inviting the unconscious into harmony, making the unknown known.
Jung talked about the child motif too, right? Signifying future potential.
Yes, as representing futurity, anticipation of future developments, paving the way for a future change of personality. When we embrace new, positive self-narratives, we're essentially nurturing that inner potential for renewal and growth, planting seeds for the future self.
So conscious language helps us talk to those deeper parts of ourselves, integrate them.
That's the goal. Jung's aim of individuation is the synthesis of conscious and unconscious elements to form the self, the integrated whole, beyond just the conscious ego. Conscious language is a tool to bridge that gap, to bring shadows, potentials, intuitions into a form we can work with, building a coherent narrative for all of who you are.
And Peterson mentioned the new self feeling like a stranger initially.
Right, that it can feel like a stranger that threatens the stability of the kingdom of old beliefs, that stranger challenges our assumptions. If you start saying, I am courageous, when your internal kingdom has always believed I am fearful, it feels disruptive. Rewriting the monologue is about integrating that new identity, making the stranger the new normal, expanding your internal kingdom.
So this really isn't just about quick fixes. It's a deep, lifelong journey of self-discovery and creation. And the words we choose today are literally building the you of tomorrow, an ongoing conversation with our deepest self.
Beautifully put. You get to choose the dialogue.
So wrapping up then, remember, the language you use, especially internally, isn't just describing your world, it's actively creating it. It's coding your identity, shaping your emotions, building the future you. You have the power to be the conscious author.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with, something provocative. Consider Oliver Sacks's patient, Rebecca. Despite intellectual challenges, she had profound emotional depth. She said, I'm like a sort of living carpet. I need a pattern, a design. I come apart, I unravel unless there's a design. It highlights how crucial our internal design, our narrative, is for holding ourselves together. So the provocative thought is this. What design are you consciously weaving for your own living carpet today? And what old, unraveling threads are you ready to replace with new patterns of hope, resilience, and growth? It's a daily act of creation, isn't it?
It really is. Go make it real. One word, one thought, one day at a time. Until next time, keep diving deep.